Leave meeting. No.
Yeah. All right, so I figure this meeting we'll just go over, kind of discuss some of the things we think or looked up might change or be affected, or how science will look going into the next 4 years with the transition between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And I guess I can start. I went and did a little bit of research, not extensively, but just kind of looked at some of the I guess, platform that Biden ran on, some of the things he was promising, as well as some speculation regarding various things that could happen in the next 4 years. So I might just share my screen that I took the notes on. It's not particularly pretty, but let's see, just so it's easier to look at. I think that should be good. How does that look? Able to read that? So these are just kind of some notes I went through and looked at some stuff that, particularly areas that are relevant to kind of the stuff I do, more physics related, kind of the physical sciences. So here I have kind of separated them into energy related stuff, climate related stuff, which there's a lot of stuff that goes between those two, and then kind of space, NASA related stuff, and then just some general science things. And yeah, if any of you guys have questions on any of the stuff as I go through, feel free to jump in, or if you've heard something else that relates to this.
This is definitely
kind of start with that energy. Oh, what was that?
Oh, this is definitely from the mind of a physicist, because what I see is 3 topics on physics and 1 with the rest of us.
Yeah, so this is
as a biologist, I'm like, wait, those are all, what are you talking about, 3 or 4?
So these, yeah, I specifically looked only at the things that were kind of in my expertise, since I have less opinions and things about the stuff with the NIH and I guess other areas there. So it'll be interesting to hear if you guys have heard anything on those areas. But for these, so for energy, I thought it was, so the Department of Energy is kind of one of the biggest in the physical science, biggest funders of science in general. It's kind of the Department of Energy and the National Science Foundation are sort of the 2 big ones, with the Department of Energy being the largest because they actually run all of the national labs and provide a whole lot of funding for science. And so I found out, I guess right now, the senator who is basically in charge, or the chair of the appropriations, so basically doling out how much money the Department of Energy gets, is actually in the Senate, is actually retiring this year. So that could definitely change some things as far as what the Senate puts in their budget for the Department of Energy. So that was interesting. I guess the next 2 people in line, assuming that the Senate still remains in Republican control, would be either Senator Susan Collins from Maine or Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. So they are both, I believe, on that Senate Appropriations Committee for the Department of Energy, and they're basically next in line for that role. And I know they both expressed interest in energy innovation and work around energy. And especially, I know a little bit more myself about Lisa Murkowski, just both as a resident or previous resident of Alaska, where Lisa Murkowski is the senator from, and then also actually working on the Senate Energy Committee as an intern in my undergrad. So she is in line for that, but she at the moment is the chair of the Senate Committee on Energy. So they're kind of the Senate committee that produces all the legislation around energy. And she's the chair of that, but she's actually reaching the term limit for her time as the chair of that committee, and so will have to be stepping down when that happens. And so because of that, there's actually a very large energy policy bill that's been in the works actually since I was an intern there in 2017. So the last like 3 years they've been, or even longer than that, been trying to get this energy policy bill pushed through, which is sort of a large expansion and modernization of a bunch of energy related laws and regulations in the country. And so that's kind of been just stuck in Congress for quite a while. And with Senator Murkowski having to step down from the chair of that committee, it's kind of the future of that bill is unsure and what's going to happen there unless it does pass in this lame duck session, which is probably unlikely. So that was kind of the legislation and I guess in Congress, things around energy. As far as actually the Biden administration picking heads for the Department of Energy, I kind of did a little bit of research on what speculations might be, and kind of the two names I saw that might end up being that head are one guy, Dr. Ernest Moniz. He's a physics and engineering professor at MIT and was actually the Secretary of Energy under the Obama administration, I believe at the end of the administration. And then the other name is this Dr. Elizabeth Sherwood Randall, who she's kind of another one that's might get the position. She was a previous Biden aide, and her background is more in international relations. So personally, in my opinion, as like someone who is a scientist, I think putting a scientist at the head of the DOE, I'm in favor of that. Especially considering the last 4 years, we've had someone who is very far away from that. But that's kind of the two names I'd seen for that Department of Energy. But the one thing to note is there could be a lot of gridlock in the Senate for both these nominations and pretty much all of Biden's nominations to these positions, especially if the Senate is still in Republican control. And I guess this did happen in Obama's second term, where a lot of the nominations took a really long time to get any vote in the Senate, if they even got votes at all. So hopefully that can go through quickly and they can appoint someone, but who really knows? Kind of the next area I looked at was sort of climate, and just went through with this really and kind of looked at what the Biden administration has kind of promised to do. So one, we're expected to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord pretty close in or soon after Biden takes office, just because that's something that can be done without congressional approval. But then I think the rest that I have here are just sort of things that Biden was campaigning on and I found on his website. One, sort of his goal is to achieve a carbon pollution-free power sector by 2035. Obviously that's after his term will end, but I guess that would indicate an aggressive push towards that carbon-free energy sector. He does have a plan to upgrade 4 million commercial buildings and make them more energy efficient. And then just do a whole bunch. The next few are kind of a lot of stuff regarding new energy technologies, energy efficiency stuff, things that are required for a renewable energy grid. So energy storage like batteries, you have new building material, hydrogen's another energy storage solution. And to me, I actually am pretty happy with that because I think energy efficiency related stuff is a really important thing to push on, both because it can help with climate change and is also in the long run both saves money and also can save a lot of carbon emissions. And then some other kind of things I did find, it looks like Biden's climate plan did include actually direct cash rebates and some financing options for a lot of kind of energy efficient related appliances. We see here like windows. And I think they also had some stuff in there about expanding electric vehicle tax rebates. So that was sort of, and then the last thing I thought was real interesting was that they proposed creating this new agency, which would be the Advanced Research Projects Agency on Climate, or ARPA-C. So these ARPA things started originally, the Department of Defense has what's known as DARPA, which I can't remember. I think it's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, maybe, which is basically a kind of moonshot, really risky but high reward projects and research is funded through this agency. And there is also an ARPA-E for energy related stuff that's through the Department of Energy. And so it looks like they're proposing creating a third one, which would be specifically targeted towards climate. And then going down after climate, next one is kind of NASA related and space related. And there really isn't a whole lot I was able to find. I think NASA tends to be pretty non-controversial. The one thing, it looked like there's a high probability that Biden will pick a woman to be the the director of NASA. Other than that, I couldn't really find too much more about possible picks he would choose. But the one thing of note regarding policy in NASA is, so in the Trump administration, they did a lot of pushing to try and return Americans to the surface of the moon, which there was a bit, especially in the scientific community, a bit of pushback on that, just because that meant a lot of resources were going to specifically human travel instead of actual science directives of NASA. And so it's likely that the Biden administration will scale back that goal of getting astronauts to the moon by 2024. Though it's also not likely that they'll completely abandon that, just because NASA has been one of those agencies that is the funding to it has really fluctuated and kind of been all over the place depending on administrations, especially considering NASA missions are often these missions that'll last, take 15, 20 years to prepare for. And so it can be a lot of roller coaster rides there. So they probably won't completely abandon that goal.
Riley, I did see, so when I was looking at random stuff, when it came to NASA, there was the assumption they were going to scale back a lot of those manned missions through NASA's end, because the argument was with the rise of SpaceX and things like that, like the private sector will do it cheaper, and they're like, we shouldn't waste more money on just doing that.
That is an interesting, take as well, that if, the private sectors are pushing that NASA can then focus its energy, I guess, on things that are less commercially viable then, which is, definitely interesting, and something that, is definitely a lot different than, a couple decades ago. I'm sure no one figured that would be the case.
When NASA was the only option.
Definitely. So it will be interesting to see with NASA, I think, what big missions get pushed through. Obviously, again, NASA tends to work on more of a decade time frame. So it's likely not a whole lot will change, but never you might see some things. I know they are expecting the James Webb Space Telescope will hopefully be launching sometime in Biden's administration. That's gotten pushed back a lot, but that's basically the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. But so that's going to be kind of the big, their flagship mission. And then finally moving on to kind of this last thing, which is more general science related stuff. I just kind of picked a few things from some newsletters I found and stuff. There's this one, I guess, promising piece of legislation that's currently in the Senate. It's called this Endless Frontier Act, which I guess would provide around $100 billion of funding over a 5-year period to various technology and I think emerging technology, new technologies, and distribute that through the NSF. So that's a pretty big chunk of change that would be going, I would assume, a lot of it going to kind of fundamental research in material and technology sciences. And then I also did find that I guess Biden has floated, this was a while ago, but he did float the idea of taking the White House Office of Science and Technology, the director of that, and actually making it a cabinet level position, which I think would be great to have that science, specifically science technology, be a bigger role in kind of the executive branch as opposed to just an office in the White House actually have a bigger role. I don't actually know if that would mean it would become like a department of science or how specifically that would work.
I was gonna ask, like, is there really a difference, or is it just like a title change? Like, will now scientists have like a larger voice in the debate of what's going on, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't really know a whole lot. I know, like, I'm guessing if you're have a cabinet position, you might have a little bit more access, more frequent access to the president, but yeah, maybe you have a little more autonomy also. Because I know when I found this, they basically had cited the fact that over the last 4 years that White House Office of Science and Technology has been kind of, hasn't done a whole lot, and hasn't really, it's just been sort of in the White House basement or whatever they said.
This is the first I've heard of it.
What was that?
This is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah. So it's an interesting office, but it would be great to see that become, I think, more of a larger role there. And then another one which I thought was interesting, particularly considering the fact that I did that presentation like a month and a half or a couple months ago regarding 5G. Biden has talked about wanting to expand broadband and wireless connections via 5G so that more Americans will be able to have that. One, if you remember from that presentation at all, I think it's pretty ambitious to be able to do that to every American in 4 years. That's likely more of like a decade or so off to actually have wide coverage of that. But I couldn't really find anything. I didn't do a whole lot of searching on whether he's really aware and the administration's aware of kind of some of the scientific risks with 5G that I kind of talked about before regarding interfering with weather forecasting and just climate and atmospheric measurements. So it was interesting to see that he specifically mentioned that in the platform. And then finally, the last one is that a little more general, but just the campaign was talking about that they want to invest more in the national laboratories and specifically high performance computing. And so that was just kind of, I guess, a statement that they support the national laboratories. So that's kind of have everything about general science. Before I go down and show some of these figures, I don't know if anyone had any questions or comments.
Yeah, so everything I've been reading, there's one common trend I also noticed is like you got to take a lot of these like goals and things with a grain of salt because a lot of them were made before COVID. So now these year plans are probably going to be thrown completely out of whack because not only do we have a lot of what Biden's wanting to do is go back and undo everything Trump did. So you have to take time for that, implement his own things, but we're already going to be set back even further because of COVID, and we have to like take care of that situation first. So some of these like, oh yeah, we can do this in 4 years. Even your 10-year estimation, probably not. It's going to take multiple presidents all working in unison with like the same goal to get some of these things done, I think, just from how much we've been set back.
Yeah, that is definitely an interesting, even before COVID, I think a lot of times the promises made are very pie in the sky.
Ambitious.
but yeah,
politicians, right? Like that's the whole goal, though, is you got to make it sound great, like you can get all this stuff done. But with the Trump presidency and the general lack of support for science lately and among the public, it makes it kind of difficult to get anything done and to even foresee enthusiasm and support for some of these actions, and especially when conspiracy theories can pop up and completely shut you down through half the country.
Yep.
Yeah, like
the 5G stuff, or
oh god,
the vaccine.
yeah. Okay, it's like, so we'll get the vaccine. Oh, he's wanting to do nationwide 5G. That's how they activate those tracking devices, right there through 5G. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, that is a good point, though. It will be interesting to see. I guess a lot of this probably does hinge on how well we can implement like the vaccine, how well it works, and how quickly like everything can recover from the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because everything else pretty much takes a backseat to that.
And with Trump's current lack of transitioning, he's barring Biden's and his entire transition team from actually doing anything. I actually just found an article right before we started that was talking about, or it's titled, "Biden says Trump's transition delay will put new government behind with vaccine." So because their entire rollout, because this vaccine won't be ready until they take over, but they have no idea what we have, like what resources they have, because they can't get like in contact with anyone. No one's letting them know how they can start planning to release it. So it's more like just pettiness, and it's stupid, but.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, and I just saw, hey Emma, I just expanded my screen and saw that you had joined, so.
Yeah, hi Emma.
I'm so sorry, guys. I was like mid walk with my puppy, and then of course, because I was like rushing back, he like stopped and tried to eat everything every step of the way. I must have saved the event on the wrong calendar or something. I am so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You're good.
Ian, thank you to Brad for texting me and reminding me.
You're welcome. I was just like, Emma's not usually late. I'm going to text her.
No, I was like full blown, like forever away on my walk, like enjoying the fact that I had nothing to do, because I knew I had something to do at this time, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I don't. Fake.
Thanksgiving breaks next week. You can't turn your brain off till then.
Yeah. Tell my brain that. We'll see.
All right. Well, yeah, here I will show these figures here, which are actually pretty interesting. So these are kind of, if you've never checked out the American Institute of Physics runs a program called FYI, which they actually do a whole dive. It's focused more towards like the physical science and physics, but they do a lot of stuff on other areas of just science policy. So they publish a lot of these figures, especially around this time of year when the budgets are trying to get figured out. So this is just one of the more recent ones. So what they do here is, this is the blue is basically the budget bill from the House and its budget priorities for various science-related agencies and things. And then the red is the Senate's bill. And the value is the percent change from basically the 2019 to 2020 budget year. So I think these things are really interesting to see kind of the disparities between, so it's not on here, but you can find other ones where it shows the Trump administration's request compared to all of these. So some of these, like in the Trump request, they've basically this ARPA-E, which is kind of the moonshot, high risk, high reward, energy related research. They've pretty much consistently for the past 4 years advocated for completely eliminating that. So basically it's like a minus 100% defunding there. But it's kind of interesting to look through how there's actually a fairly good agreement with a few exceptions on between the Senate and the House. So overall, most things generally staying about the same. the biggest being this increase in the Department of Energy nuclear security. Personally, I'm not exactly sure what goes to that large increase. It might just be, uncertainty in the world and things like that. But
Bombs?
what was that?
Bombs, question mark? Is that where that would fall?
Yes. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that would include, like our nuclear bombs arsenal. I think that's really the big area that area the DOE focuses on. And then, so you can kind of see here, the DOE, the Office of Science, basically staying about the same. Renewable energy, again, about the same. Nuclear energy, you can see there's less from the Democrats and a little basically the same from the Senate. And this is something that's fairly consistent. Oftentimes the Democrats will, just because the Democrats now control the House, obviously the Republicans are Senate. So often when the Democrats are in control, the nuclear energy related stuff tends to decrease. The renewable energy stuff tends to increase a little more. But you see there's not a whole lot of real fluctuations going into this next funding year. Obviously, we have some more funding increases from the like the health NIH. I think that makes sense. Some of that difference between the House and the Senate might be because typically I believe the House bill comes out first. And so that came out a while ago, and maybe now with like the pandemic getting worse, that's where the Senate bill is increasing there. But I thought that would just be interesting to show there. Not a whole lot of change with the Senate and the House. And then this was a figure which, let me see, I wonder if I can, well, can you guys see? Let me see if I can expand this to, that I actually found yesterday. How does that look? Are you able to read that? Should I make it bigger?
Looks good.
All right.
Yeah, I
So
can
this
read it.
was someone, this is specifically for, I believe, more climate, environmental stuff, but it was interesting to see these are basically the circle on the light blue circle is basically the actions that the Biden administration can take that does not require congressional approval. So stuff they can basically do right off the bat, their executive orders. And then the stuff on the, in the purple, the circle on the right is stuff that actually needs congressional approval, and specifically Senate approval, since it's up in the air whether that's going to be Democrat or Republican controlled. So I thought it was kind of interesting to see here that some of the, and then I guess they also I think think tank that created this ordered it. Things at the top on at least that right side are things that are more likely of the Senate actually approving. So you can kind of see there at the bottom, like getting a carbon price and a carbon tax, I believe that includes, is pretty unlikely that a Republican-controlled Senate would let that pass. I looked into the Jones Act, and that was some more, I didn't look into it enough to really understand what specifically that was. But you can see at the top, like tax-related and tax cut things are much higher chance of getting approved in a Republican-controlled Senate. And then on sort of the things that the administration can do just kind of with a signing is, obviously the Paris Agreement that I kind of mentioned before, they can do that. And then some environmental stuff about basically on like what land they can give to, at federal land they can give to private industries. For instance, that ANWR, which is actually something I'm passionate about just because that's the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which is in Alaska. And that's a big thing where it's pretty divided issue there. But I thought it was kind of interesting. You can kind of read through all of these, but sort of look through them.
Oh, Bradley.
Yeah.
So just quickly looked at the Jones Act. It's the Merchant Marine Act of 1920, and it requires all goods shipped between U.S. ports to be transported by U.S. vessels and operated primarily by Americans. I think it's just a guaranteed, like, shipping jobs for U.S. Americans.
Interesting. I wonder why that's included in its environmental, energy-related stuff.
I don't know, but the quick Google search, there were multiple articles that says it has to go. So
Okay.
I haven't read much into it, but apparently it's not favored. Looks like there's some heavy information on trade with Puerto Rico. So.
Interesting. All right. So it sounds like that's a bit of a more in-depth issue there.
Yeah.
There's some like interesting stuff, very, very tangentially related to this, but about using like machine learning. Like machine learning has been used to pick up like patterns in like whales talking to each other, and they're trying to use that they're trying to figure out how they can use those kind of technologies to be able to like talk to the whales. So these like commercial boats that go through the ocean can like, well, basically all these like commercial freight giant vessels like kill a lot of whales and stuff. And so maybe that, I don't know if that counts as environment, but maybe prioritizing the ocean. Okay, probably not. But
I could
it is
definitely
cool.
see that.
It would be cool to talk to whales. It sounds like fake, but I swear that it's like real. But
that is super. I had not heard that. I could see how that would. You don't necessarily need to talk to them as much as long as you can send a signal that warns them to almost like a super high tech like scarecrow.
Yeah.
Style thing, huh?
Okay, yeah, maybe not talking to them. I think the researchers probably said something closer to what you said than what I said, but.
I mean, you could think of that if you want to like. it's a step towards there.
In regards to the ocean stuff, I did read that the Trump administration had rolled back a lot of fishing regulations, and I think I saw the hopes that Biden would come in, and a lot of ocean researchers were wanting those implemented back to help protect the local environments of where they were trying to study.
That is interesting. Yeah, coming from Alaska, I know there's a lot of. Because in Alaska, they fish, well, state, at least the salmon related stuff is all state controlled, but it is because it's such a big part of the economy. They kind of figured out it basically all, even Republicans and Democrats all agree on like the controls and regulations they have, because they've basically realized that if you don't effectively manage that, it basically goes away and dwindles, and you lose that huge source of income.
Right. But I just remember, I think I remember the Trump administration implementing the drawbacks, and everyone's like, why? And the idea was, well, we can make a lot more money because we can fish more. But everyone's like, but you kill them. Okay.
There was
it's not
like
consistent.
I watched something or listened to something that was really cool about like implementing these like fishing policies where you create these like protected areas, and just implementing like small restrictions on like the number of like a certain type of fish that you can get in one area had like crazy impacts for the biodiversity, like all the way from like the bottom to the top of the food chain. This might not be technical terms because I don't know them, but like they saw like it returned to almost exactly normal just by like, basically if you get rid of like the big commercial fishing companies, that's like where the biggest deal comes from. It's not the small guys, but these like just having protected areas, like not even everywhere, like just small protected areas was able to restore like, I don't know. Lots of
that's crazy.
life.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with this. I can't wait to see. I think it was Colorado. It's introducing wolves back into its environment. That's going to be fun to watch. That's going to be chaotic. Oh my God. Yeah, random. Oh, wolves attacks going to be. Oh, I understand. I get it. It's going to be fun. I can get some of the the life cycle things you're trying to fix. Bad, you don't want to wipe out a species, but now you're going to bring them back. Ooh. And you are bringing them back in a different environment from when you killed them off.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can't remember where it was, but it just came up that I was reading about in Yellowstone, they did that. Mm-hmm. And when they brought back the wolves, they had it ended up completely changing things, ended up changing the actual landscape because they killed off more deer. The deer ate less grass because of that. And actually they saw rivers actually move and change because they introduced wolves back into Yellowstone.
It's crazy how much you can do. It just either moving one animal to another. I mean, ask Australia. That was just horrible. The cane toad, was that it? Right?
I guess I don't know much about that.
Oh yeah, it's wildlife biology is insane. Yeah, a friend that's really into it, and we studied some of it when I was in my master's. So the stories are ridiculous on what one species can do.
Dang. All right, here I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here.
Oh,
that's basically everything I had. Unless you guys want to see that more, I can share those images if people want. But yeah, that was basically what I had kind of just looked up real quick, kind of some things on that stuff. I don't know if anyone else has seen, or not necessarily if you don't have to have done research, but if you've heard stuff. I know there's a lot of things with health and COVID and that kind of stuff recently. But
most of what I saw was really you can find the policies and their stances before COVID, but now that we have COVID and then with the recent election stuff, I think it's kind of hard to determine what will really happen during the presidency. Especially we don't know the control of the Senate, so we don't really know how easy it's going to be to get certain things done. Or if we're going to have 4 years of just anti anything Biden does, if that type of situation, because that's where our politics keep going. Where all right, yeah, you screwed us. Now time to return the favor. The only advantage is now it does seem like Biden does put at least a little bit more emphasis on science and wanting to implement those who believe in science, understand science.
Mm-hmm.
The task force that he put together has some real stars on it, so I'm looking forward to that.
Oh yeah.
I wish there was more this is my epi versus physician mindset, but I wish there was more population health focus rather than just MDs. It's mostly physicians, but there's one of the new members is this super badass lady from Yale, and she does really cool research about discrimination in all these different areas, some not even directly related to healthcare delivery. So I think that, and I think she's going to bring a really cool perspective and hopefully help us get out of some of these they're not going to go away, but help us alleviate some of the disparities with COVID that we've been seeing.
Yeah, I think that would be something cool to sort of follow up on and see how Biden and his team sort of deal with that. Because I feel like the Senate right now, and if the Senate stays red, is going to be a major hurdle to overcome in regards to sort of just getting anything done. So it'll be interesting to see.
The one advantage I think you see what Biden has over Trump in that regard, though, is that Biden won't be. I don't believe he'll be quite as polarizing. So it'll be easier for the Senate to kind of give a little bit and probably work with him, whereas Trump was very much my way or no way. Yeah. And he controlled the voters enough that the Senate was more scared of going against him from him bashing. And I don't see Biden doing that. He's more that career politician style, so I think he'll be way more down to negotiate and make them work together.
Apparently Mitch McConnell and Biden, they didn't become, this was the topic, but they didn't become actual friends, but they got pretty close because Biden was the go-to guy for Mitch McConnell during the Obama administration, because Biden was always let's have this high level discussion about what's morally right and wrong, and was okay, I understand we're not going to change your mind about this, let's actually do something. So the whole podcast is diving into Mitch McConnell and to see if this whole Trump era is gonna mess up whatever rapport they did have before. But I guess the point is that Biden did have like this reputation for being like a bridger or like just a let's actually get something done kind of person. Like, I just can't believe, okay, this might be, I don't know, I'm just gonna say it. Like, I can't believe we haven't passed another COVID relief thing since like so long ago. And I was just thinking about like, if I was a Democrat, yeah, I would want it to be, okay, I am a Democrat. If I was a Democrat in the room, I would say like, yeah, I want you to spend more. I want you to do all these things. But bottom line is like the arguing, people still haven't gotten anything for how many months. And so it's like easy for me to say because I'm not in the room, but it's just like, it seems like there's so much stagnation for a lot of things. I'm real interested / maybe a little pessimistic to see where it goes, but
yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think for me, the coolest policy thing I'm interested in is that Biden wants to rejoin the WHO. I think that will be the World Health Organization.
What did you say before WHO?
He wants to rejoin it essentially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that will be both a really cool event to happen, but also a very interesting thing to see, because like I was reading this article that basically talked about how the WHO has sort of changed since the Trump era, because 4 years of Trump and like 4 years of lack of global health diplomacy has like forced the EU and like the Asian countries to really, and even to some extent Canada, to like really invest in the WHO and like build up global ties, leaving the US out. So like the US is like behind on a lot of things. And so one article in Politico was talking about how it's going to be interesting to see how Germany, the current like leaders of the WHO, sort of react to the USA as like, because the USA was a former leader and now they're trying to come back in. Is Germany going to let them take like position as leader, or is Germany going to be like, no, you guys take the backseat, we lead now? And so it'll be interesting to see sort of how that affects the WHO system and how it affects like how they all interact, and like considering that it's going through like a restructuring right now, how it affects the restructuring, because that'll be something really cool to watch. My computer's dying, so I'm plugging it in. Oh God, headphones, oh God.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm curious if like once all this is done, if now that we've gone through it, if there's like a massive influx of funding to like public health and health related sciences, if we like learn a lesson, or
if we can take notes from the H1N1 during Obama's administration, no.
Yeah, I was gonna say like what usually happens with like public health outbreaks is like Zika is a great example. So like I'm a member of the Midwest Center of Excellency for Vector-Borne Diseases, which is a big center that was funded by the CDC and by the I think it was the Senate that technically passed the bill to fund us. Anyway, we got a metric ton of funding during Zika. Like there were millions of dollars, like 5-year grants were set up. It was great. And then Zika went away, and they just cut funding slowly. So they're slowly being like, chop. And so now people are like, what are we gonna do? We have very little funding. So it's they're trying to like branch out and come up with the mechanisms of funding. But it's just like a clear sign that like the way the US, I mean the way a lot of countries work for public health funding is it's super reactive. So like they'll fund something after the fact, and then when they think it's gone, they're like, oh, we can switch funding from that to something else. And it's a weird reactive system that has not helped and will never help. So yeah.
Yeah, just to step back a little bit, I was happy about the WHO. I remember that was like the big, like there was a lot of the support, like withdrawing from the WHO, because China was like in control of it, like there was all that stuff. It was like, all right, but why are we withdrawing entirely? Like we should still be in there, because the thing against it was like if we leave, others are going to come in and they're happy to take over and take the spot of like world leader, and like we don't want to give that up. We can still like, if there is a problem, we should be able to address it while we're there. Like if we are the leader, we should be able to help out and like really work this through, which was the big thing against Trump's withdrawal. And trying to convince these nations that, oh yeah, we can come back in. They're like, if Trump runs again in 4 years, what are you going to do? Like if he wins, then are you guys going to withdraw again? Why should we trust having you around? Like we're not going to rely on you guys. What if the next person who comes in isn't, maybe it's not Trump, but it's, it just has the same personality, same beliefs, comes in, does this again.
Yeah.
We've kind of I feel like we've certainly lost trust of a lot of other nations through some of the ideas. Though I do see the logic when they were like, oh, we need to withdraw because we're getting, they're like, we're hurting our economy. It's like, but are they? It sounds like a lot, but we're kind of screwing ourselves over in a lot of things too.
Yeah, it's like saying we can't afford it, but we need it. It's like health insurance, right? You need it after the fact, so you got to pay for it. But if you stop paying for it and then you need it, you're kind of screwed. And that's kind of what Trump was doing. He's like, I don't need health insurance, and then just not using the global connections. And we might see repercussions of it in the near future because the WHO plays into plays a big role in some of the global health research that goes on, and some of the vaccine funding that basically goes around the world. And so one big interesting thing that a lot of people will be talking about is these vaccines that are coming out. The EU has put a chunk of money into that through the WHO, and the US hasn't put as much into it. And so people are like, is that going to affect who gets prioritized in regards to who gets the vaccine first? How does that play out? Even though Pfizer technically is housed here, it owes the EU so much more money than it does the US. And so that's a big thing that people are really curious about. And that's been debated a lot. Thankfully, Pfizer's been like, no, we're just going to give it to everyone. We're not going to be like, hey, you can't have it. But people are still like, but what happens if you don't have enough? What countries do you prioritize? And so
It's interesting though, in the context of healthcare expenditures and stuff, the United States has the highest expenditures of anyone by a long shot, but we also do more R&D than anyone by a long shot. Mm-hmm. And so it's some of these things that there's so much bloat in things that could be cut down, but then it's are we going to generalize the fact that so many other scientific advancements were made thanks to us, the US, and then we shared them with other, I'm just also interested to see where this ends up. And I think the domestic versus sending it elsewhere is an interesting conversation. We saw that with masks, we started producing it more in facilities here, but then they sent it out of the country. So
yeah, that's part of why this whole debate's going on. It's because again, the EU has not just the EU, the WHO and a lot of global entities have been really smart about setting up separate partnerships with big health industries, right? So vaccine companies, a lot of big vaccine companies have huge partnerships with other countries, but also have partnerships with the WHO to distribute to lower income countries that can't afford it, regardless. And so there's all these contracts that are in play, and Trump came in and he was like, now the US can do whatever we want. And everyone's like, you can't. And now he's set it up so the US is kind of behind everyone else instead of leading the charge. So it was a really interesting global stage over the last 4 years, and it's going to be interesting to see how the transition affects, how Trump's behavior affects the Biden presidency and how it affects those global relationships.
I'm really nervous. Apparently the transition period is one of the most vulnerable the country is to foreign just threats in general, homeland security or whatever it's called. And especially we know, so everyone else in the world knows that Biden is not getting pieces of information that he should be. So we know that Biden is going to be less prepared than he should be. I'm really worried, but interested. I don't know if there's a negative version of interested to find out what happens, and if there is what happens with the transition and what we don't find out about until later. I don't know if you guys heard about the Iran, someone in Iran sent out these emails to Proud Boy or to Republicans or Democrats or something about the Proud Boys are going to be there, so make sure you don't vote, or and it's in this whole long thing that was we know who you vote for, we'll come get you, basically. And it was not even about voting for one person or the other. Like the whole point was to like freak people out and get us mad at each other. And it's like,
I mean, it's worked.
it works. That's
Yeah.
it
It's-
works.
it's a-
That's
I
the
mean,
scary part.
It's a very old school, straightforward strategy: divide and conquer. So yeah.
But I don't think we'll see a lot of the like the global effects and how we play like on a global scale until probably the next presidency. I think a lot of what Biden's presidency is going to be spent is just recovering from COVID.
Yep.
Getting the vaccines, and then we won't see the ramifications of the Trump stuff until either late Biden, like the last year, or up until the next president, whether it be Biden or whoever runs after. God forbid it's Trump again. I'm sorry.
Oh my God,
like
no.
I hope he leaves.
He needs to
the
go to
country.
jail.
He said
And, like regardless of his policies, just his personality. No, we can't handle that. And I think that would just hurt foreign relations even more because they're gonna be like, no, we're not letting that back in again.
I mean, some countries will. Russia will. China will, because none of it's like
The ones that
crazy
matter,
complex
right?
way. But I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll be like, heck yeah, go for it. We're gonna keep doing what we do over here. You kids just spiraled out to chaos.
yeah.
But
yeah, another
I-
like along the
Carl.
line. Oh, sorry, I was gonna say along the lines of what Emma said. I actually heard something similar, but like the one I heard was this analyst talking about like national security, and so how Biden, because there's this delay in his national security clearance, there's an increased risk of like some major national security event happening early in his career, where because he didn't get the information early enough, he didn't have time to respond. And the way they equated it, and this is messed up, but the way they equated it was the Bush-Gore administration, and they're like, because Bush didn't get clear national security clearance early enough because Gore was suing, it like had some ramifications to terrorist attacks later in that like in Bush's presidency. And I was like, that I did not know that. That is insane. So like, I agree. This is a very vulnerable time period.
But that doesn't take into account that Bush did 9/11. So
Jesus.
no, we can't bring this up here.
oh wait, we're recording. Whoops.
Yes, this is gonna go on YouTube. We can't start that.
Oh my gosh.
Uh,
Oh, Emma.
I'm
well,
sorry.
now we should probably, it's after 5, so I think if we end it here, we'll probably be good.
Yeah. Can we please put this on YouTube and just say, "Oh, Emma"?
No.
That's the title of this week's meeting. Oh, Emma.
I'm the one who posted to YouTube, so I'll edit it.
Nice.
That's right, yeah.
I don't know how to do that. Don't worry. Don't